after the Reclaim Your Lives and focus on Fauci media, I didn't want to leave it at that. I wanted to continue on the front foot in terms of a very dynamic investigation and revelation of medical science, the dystopia that has taken over fraternity and the health science industries. The Lazarus Symposium was, in my mind, a ongoing symposia where we could start to look at genetic interventionism, basically. What it is that is triggering Morgellons syndrome, how we are being hacked at the mitochondrial level and then at the soul level. So that interventionism is the piece that I needed to identify in an ongoing quantum conversation with some of the world's leading thinkers, scientists, doctors, innovators, engineers.
And our journey has been, in historical terms, angelic humans who dream in love and joy and are aspects of God and have all that power, who have been held back from it by those people who choose the desire for control. And that's where we are now.
The state of bliss for me is the direct access to your divine self, to your divine self with a big S, and that's your infinite potential. And this is what, sacred sexuality for me is all about.
We're seeing how the humanity that we have, so fragile and so wonderful, can be taken over by a sort of fist of influence coming remotely outside our bodies and brains.
And conflict and war, and so, a large percent of the U.S. economy is based on creating war materials.
Where 80% of the medical staff is not getting it. You're going to watch this charade going on and on.
Rudolf Steiner is someone to look at as far as his understanding of where he saw we were going to basically denude our souls, essentially, to surrender our souls to this idea of, practicality, ease of living. It looks good on the outside, but inside it's rotting. That's really what we're looking at with this transhuman agenda.
I believe that if we can be unified to create solutions, we can help and save a lot of people. Unfortunately, it is a crisis right now.
This 432, everywhere in nature, you can see this absolute perfection.
We can truly never attach to one aspect and one narrative. That we're here, we're invited to play, right? The universe, the God within us is inviting us to play and to look at the reality from different angles. And through the vibrational revelations, this is how we've been able to navigate and go deeper into questioning everything that we know, everything.
Physics is actually the gateway to understand consciousness. It's beautiful and so exciting.
So the beauty of the Great Reset that's actually going on is that the game is up for the globalists and that it's very easy to explain to someone.
Please pay attention to this initiative. It really is a very healthy attempt by a lot of very good and noble people out there, truthers and disclosure merchants, and very brilliant people in different disciplines to triangulate the truth of who we are, where we come from, where we find ourselves, and how we engage the mechanics of ascension.
We saw coming exactly what is happening now, the strangling of social structures and of the elimination of freedom and the depopulation of the planet. And we said, this has to be stopped.
When we realize that we don't get old, we mold, and that fermentation is taking place within our own body, that if we want to protect ourselves from EMF, from food poisoning, glyphosate, from air pollution such as titanium dioxide, we do that by managing our internal environment.
That is a global headline news that all scientific journals should be putting as headline news and cover photographs of the quasi-crystals that we've discovered, because people don't realize what a big deal that is.
Things are getting extremely obvious, which should be something we could celebrate, because finally everything is in the open.
really need to focus on opening up. And the root causes are all within us. And so we have to check that and really work on that self-development within us, and then forgive yourselves in those fields, and of course the health.
The bottom line is that we have to tap into the resources that we have within us, around us, through exchanging conversation with like-minded people like we are all here. All of that enriches us, enhances our aura, enhances our plasma, makes us ascend, basically, right? And makes us traverse in the form that's more amenable for the next phase to come, and not go through the Mobius strip. We are stuck in somebody else's agenda.
That's what the Lazarus Symposium and Journal is all about, that inquiry. And that's led us on this quantum journey of discovery and of revelation, and it continues. It was initially intended as a one-year exercise, but in the last few weeks, we've looked over our shoulder and seen how extraordinary the Lazarus Symposium conversation has become as a consolidated enterprise of adventure, of investigation, of inquiry, of revelation. And so we have determined to continue on the front foot with the Lazarus initiative and continue with another season of symposiums and journals, because it is an inexhaustible discovery, it's an inexhaustible inquiry, and we're learning so much along the way.
Well, friends, a very, very hearty welcome on this Midsummer's Day, June the 21st, 2022. By my reckoning, the eye of the needle, wherein we seek here to thread a rather voluminous camel. And I've got the right people today joining me to explain the physics of how to thread a camel through the eye of a needle. But before we do that, far more important, I'd like to make introduction to Lagerfeld, Wow, Mr. Wow to you, street name El Chapo, acronym PTSD. He does answer to the name Snack as well, and he's my co-host today. And he's my compadre here in Mexico. And I was told by a psychic who very kindly sent a message through a couple of weeks ago saying, the minute I saw your dog, I have to let you know it's not a dog at all. It's this 11-inch long, super-dimensional rainbow creature that slipped into a dog's body in order to accompany you here for a time on the mortal plane. So I'm taking that as read, because this is no dog. Trust me, this is a very strange creature. But he'll be on my lap for the duration. I'm not going to wax too lyrical on the initiative. We all know more or less what we're doing with the Lazarus Symposium and why it's an important conversation, why the Newearth Horizon is an important conversation, speaking to affirmation, speaking to manifestation, because it's all down to us now, in the now. Many of us have managed to walk the first furlong through the valley of death with this insidious collapse of paradigm that has occurred in the last couple of years. You would have to be brain dead or double vaxxed to avoid that reckoning, that knowing within the seat of your soul. We all know that we're moving through a paradigmatic shift, and we know that this is why we were born. This is why we steered our plasma, as Dan Winter would put it, into this mortal realm. We're not here just for hijinks, and there's not many hijinks to be had, let's face it. It's a pretty fucked up mortal realm in the year 2022, or is it? And therein lies the question, and therein lies the rub. It is at the same time euphoric, and we need to be able to discover that still point of bliss and that still point of pure affirmation in the now, which is the Christic, the Christed aspect, our supernature, so to speak. Lazarus Initiative seeks resurrection of species and planet through consciousness and action, active dialogue. And we'll continue for another season. We had originally set this up as a one-year series of symposia with journals that accompany it. For those of you who don't know, you can sign up at lazarusinitiative.com, and the symposia are made freely available after they've been broadcasted and held for a few weeks. And then the journals are also made available. And there is one hell of a lot of powerful information from, I believe, some of the world's greatest influencers, thinkers, minds, and hearts. And I'm very honored and thrilled to be able to bring on to the first panel today good friends, very trusted friends, all of whom you will know. I will start with David Sarita, who's been with us from the inception. David, lovely to see you. How are you?
Oh, great, Sacha. It's finally summer here. We didn't really have a spring in British Columbia. It was just pouring rain the whole time. So it's so nice to be in the sun.
Well, David, it's been an incredible year for you. You lost your beloved. She certainly gained her angelic stripes in the course of the last year. And I must say, you navigated that with such extraordinary nobility of demeanor and spirit. I just don't know how you have walked your walk, but you've done it, and it's real, because every single time I've spoken to you, you've been in that same state of grace as it relates to losing the love of your life and the mother of your children. And I want you to speak to that momentarily, if you don't mind, because this today's summit is really about how do we as a peoples tap into that still point, as Dan Winter would have it, the bliss peak wave. How do we? Give me 2 minutes on that, David, and then I'm going to bring our other guests in 2 minutes. Floor's yours.
Well, firstly, when my wife went into this incredible altered psychic state when we were living in Sedona, Arizona, and in the beginning I thought, it was wondrous. I mean, she was tapping into higher dimensions. And actually, when about 5 years ago, I had this experience, and I've been doing meditation practices every day for 45 years. But at this particular time, this beautiful white dove, it's interesting because you're opening, you see in your graphic for today is the white dove. And the white dove appeared in my dream. It dissolved. No, sorry, I was dreaming a dream, and this white dove appears. And it's shining with this incredible light. And I wake up, it had a rainbow around it, actually. It was transmitting this most incredible ecstasy, bliss. And my daughter, Alira, who's now, almost 12, had the same dream the same night. And I suddenly was overtaken several times a day by this blinding ecstasy bliss. And I would have to stop doing my family chores, like vacuuming the floor, cleaning up messes. Because the bliss got so intense, I would sit in meditation pose on the couch, and this bliss would overtake me. And the whole time, over a period of 5 years, where my wife's psyche was getting deeper and deeper and deeper, and getting messages that the world was about to end. She would say, we have 3 more years left on the planet, which was actually 3 more years before the whole COVID and the whole scandal occurred. But what's amazing is this supreme bliss arrived every day, and it has arrived every day since. And during, this crisis that our family went through with her health in massive decline, I'm raising 2 daughters, and my youngest, Astaria, come over here just for a second. It was so challenging to maintain the family. And yet, if it wasn't for this bliss, this is my little Astaria, Rosie, over here.
Hi.
And if it wasn't for this supreme bliss and her, I would have broken down so badly. and yet even after Crystal passed last August 9th, which happened to be the anniversary of Nagasaki in Japan, I would be dead. And so I look at, why does this supreme state happen, once or twice a day? And there's so much bliss in this state that most humans couldn't bear it. And I ask myself over and over, it's the frequency work that I've been doing. And why is it that when I meditated with my staff or scepter on my knee, would that state purify and go to a higher level? And what is the function of making your home a temple and raising the frequency of your home, which I've been doing for years, using my coil systems to keep the vibration in the house.
David,
really,
10
really
seconds.
high.
I got to bring guests in.
So the point is, Sacha, if I wasn't in this state, it would have been over for me too.
Okay, I love
That's
this.
the point.
Yeah, you've established the temple within, and the environment within which you're living with
in the
kids.
environment. Yeah,
beautiful. Thank you. Next in, let me bring in my other compatriot and co-host for most of these symposia, our rocket scientist, our NASA turncoat, one of my dear friends, Shanaz Soni. Good to see you, Shanaz.
Hi, Sacha. Hi, David.
Hi, Shanaz.
I'm so excited to be with my buddies.
Very good to see you. Shanaz, a couple of minutes from you. You've been bouncing between building rockets and to send things to the dark side of the moon, and also doing quantum manifestation workshops, and inspiring a lot of people around the world. Your 2 minutes, Shanaz, on affirmation and manifestation post-axiomatic shift of this summer solstice.
Okay, so Sacha, you asked a question that how do we tap into the 0 point energy? And what I would say is that first acknowledge that there is this infinite amount of 0 point energy around us to tap into. So that's acknowledgement affects everything because of quantum physics, right? Because once you understand and you entangle yourself with this infinite amount of energy, you become a quantum human. So that's why I'm writing the book Quantum Human, because I want people to truly understand that we are wearing the Iron Man outfit that is woven into our soul, and it operates on a principle of self-sustainability, which is truly the reason we can conquer any disease, we can conquer anything, we can conquer any challenges in our life. And if we truly do that, and if we actually activate our human craft via central sun every day, and there are ways to do that, and I can explain all that. But the point of the story is that we are extremely powerful, and we do have a superpower within ourselves, right? So it's funny, Sacha, that you said that I do navigate life in the world of NASA and space. And I just was in a high power meeting where I was presenting to hundreds of people about self-sustainability on Moon, because that's where we're going, and then Mars. And then I had to hop into this incredible thing, Sacha, where you are on Earth creating a heaven on Earth. So I feel very privileged that I'm able to tap into all of that. And my intention is that everybody who can tap into 0 point energy around them, they can pretty much do all of it. Just like David Sarita is handling his life, being a single dad. I'm also a single mother of 4 boys. And I just want to quickly tell everybody listening that I have been raising a child who was born with the cerebral palsy from birth. I was told he's not going to be able to walk, talk, or do anything in life. And even though he doesn't have a normal life by any means, but he has a mom like me. Right now, he's attending University of South Alabama and doing a meteorology, which is his passion. His temporal lobe is damaged, but he's doing calculus and differential equation that's beyond his power, according to the doctors. But you know what? This is why we are here, is to defy these bullshit and do what we need to do, being a quantum human. So.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Well, there you have it. We're here to bypass bullshit. My next guest, let me bring in the one, the only, Dan Winter. Dan, good to see you.
Hi there. I love the stories.
Hey, I got the good one for tonight, actually. I think the good one. And speaking of the actual physics of manifestation, the actual physics of what is a soul, this is the turning point when we understand the difference between transhumanism and those who are ensouled. Here's the story. So 2 days ago, we made this film. Jean-Charles Moyen, the world's most famous secret space program survivor, the French, who's famous for his lucid dreams turned into portals, and repeatedly with witnesses, he came back with sand between his toes and water from where he lucid dreamed to. They were portal experiences. So we said, if it's real, we should be able to measure that. Well, guess what? He took the brainwave and the heart and the breath apparatus with him and made a recording. And we just did a documentary showing the actual physics. There was a flash of brainwave coherence that was off the chart, the same golden ratio and octave cascades exactly that identified when kids could see without their eyes, the tornado forms inside their head, except it was higher amplitude cascades in the brainwave. So, and it phase locked with his heart, his breath, heart rate. It's a most powerful recording, so that Patrick, who programmed all this at flameandmind.com, was speechless. So we did an hour-long documentary on this, 6,000 views in 2 days, and we have absolutely proven the physics of how a lucid dream becomes a Stargate portal, literally the physics of manifestation. And it's off the charts, man. I think, and if you want to define what a soul is, now we know the aura gets centripetal, and that phase coherence propagates in the longitudinal array, man. So I'm sorry, but I think we got the answer. Anyway,
that is very sexy, Dan.
Fun.
Danny went to the beach in the movie Contact,
Exactly.
And he brought the sand between his toes back from a cosmic
and we know
beach.
why he went to the beach, because the longitudinal array is present there, and we actually know the brainwave signature that took him there, and he had the same experience while he made the recording on flameandmind.com.
All right, before you speak about Planck, I'm going to bring on Ilana Freeland, a beloved face on this symposium. Great to see you, Ilana. How are you?
Great. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. God, you guys have such great, inspiring stories. I'm just sort of slogging it out here with all the things that have been done to planet Earth in order to make it inimical to the natural human being and ready for a transhuman model. Trying to get people to understand how precious it is to be human. You're all talking about exactly that, whether it's the quantum 0 point or it's cosmic portals. I mean, to me, being a Steiner person, I have really been concerned about humanity in this 2.5 years, because I realize that we really could lose what is human if it goes the other way. So I think what we're all doing is it's all hands on deck now, and that's the one thing good about a crisis. As the Chinese say, crisis means opportunity and danger. And I am thrilled to be in the company of people like you who are doing the science and doing the spirituality at the same time. That is the best combination.
Thank you, Ilana. That's beautifully stated. And the old, for me, the analogy of the perfect human today in our generation, in our age, is the one who can stand on that indivisible line, disidentify from the sort of mindfuckery of the status quo, not affix attention or identification to either this or that, because the this or the that is part of a kind of cosmic joke, a dialectic of binary logic and duality and all of that stuff. But to be able to stand on that indivisible line in this mortal realm, fully feeling and functioning in the feeling of being alive and being connected at the empathic level to all that is. But on the one hand, wielding a sword, which you've certainly done, Ilana, and on the other, wielding a magic wand to conjure, as the Dan Winters and the David Cerritos and Shanaz Sonis do. But it's really wielding the sword and the rod, or the magic wand, that I think is the fun bit now. We're all of us here, I believe, frontline activists, even those of us who wear a wizard's hat like Dan. We're all, or a brilliant vanguard scientist, thinker like David and Shanaz. We are all of us frontline activists because we're taking up the conversation, the only one that matters, which is how do we steer reality from here and step away from being steered by that Saturnian status quo. So thank you for that. I'm going to bring my last guest in for this panel, the fabulous Harold Kautzweiler. Really good to see you, Harold.
Good evening.
Now that, sir, is a healthy Spartan beard you're wearing. You look like you're getting ready for battle.
Yeah, in the middle of it.
Harold, how are you, and how is humanity in your keen view in the year 2022?
I was just flabbergasted with the first input of the day, saying that we had a prediction 3 years ago that this is kind of the end of the world in 3 years, which means this year. And this is, I often work with crossing lines. And this actually is crossing line number 7 that pinpoints Ascension Day to this autumn. And so things are kind of speeding up, getting exciting. And what I would like to share, because this is something I think everyone can achieve, is get sensitive to field qualities. It's more and more being that for me, kind of going out of politics, going out of science, going into the pure perception, because what we start to experience now on field level is the departing densities, developing and departing densities. And on each density, huge steps are taken to basically get the direction set for the 21st of October, which is where most of my lines are crossing. And
speak a bit more to that, 21st of October.
It's like 1/3 of a year from now, from mid-year, like longest day of the year. And my crossing lines, it's always a bit dangerous to make predictions, is that the named event is approaching, which means that the densities we're experiencing right now, like which is just qualities of consciousness coming in with their own symmetries of consciousness fields, qualities, emotional qualities, a state of consciousness being more or less elaborated, ripe, wise, whatever, that they're going to depart and split off into completely different timelines. And this is what, I mean, people have been expecting for ages. It was always the big question mark, when is it happening? 10 years ago, it was kind of a range of a couple of hundreds of years waiting for it, hoping to experience it in this lifetime. And now everything is pointing to this year, which is exciting. And me going into pure perception of how the different densities do develop, things actually speed up into that direction.
Fascinating. David, your take on what Harold's just told us.
Well, he brought up October 23rd, which is it's a powerful date for me because one of my daughters was born on that date. But I did a calculation starting at the Miracle of the Sun at Fatima, 1917, October 13th. Every 5 years, approximately, give or take, we've had a major UFO event. And that will take us to October of 2022. So I'm really curious if I keep repeating the pattern. And I see like there's a repetition in that 5-point-something year cycle. I mean, I'm trying to purify this that arrives in October of 2022. 22. So I asked him, how did you come to that date? I'm very, very curious, because another thing happened on that date. The exact day in Sedona my daughter Lara was born, we had a nuclear missile site in Montana overtaken by UFOs, where they took control of the missiles, and that was in 2010. So that was October 23rd, 2010, and that's on Robert Hastings' website. So how did you get that date, Harold?
Talking to clairvoyants, mostly independently. I mean, this is for me, intersubjective knowledge is enough for me. If 5 independent people come to the same conclusions, there must be something about it. And the strongest one actually is from that guy from Israeli News Live, who was contracted by the Pentagon to make a research about when Planet X is approaching, when the pole shift is happening, and all the other things. And he got access to the original apocryphic scripts and the original Maya calendar, none of the fake stuff that is in the libraries, by the Pentagon, just to answer that question. And when we talked, he still was kind of stuck in between 2 possible dates. That was like half a year ago. Could be 22, could be 27, I think, or 29, another one. And since then, I just have my ears open and talk to all sorts of people.
Very interesting.
And get all the crossing lines coming in on 22.
Okay, so let's see if we can triangulate that. Forgive me. Let me just put that out also to Dan or Shanaz. Are either of you conversant with anything enigmatic in October this year?
Okay. Well, not from October standpoint, Sacha, but I like to bring up a point, because Harold is touching on something that I think that the technology has been there, right? For, like, especially Vatican had the technology where they were able to feed in the information, where you can put the input into the program that tells you exactly, forecasts you the future and which timeline to hop on or which timeline to create for most of the humanity. I think that the way I see what Harold is bringing up is because so many people is becoming aware of how their choices are impacting their future, and the fact that the time is an illusion. So the thing is that the processing of all these awareness is creating a lot of convergence point for everyone to come to. So to me, I mean, if October is the time when something significant will happen on a larger basis, we still have a choice to decide whether we want to be part of that timeline or not. Because at the end of the day, we do have that choice, but we have to make sure we understand the choice and we truly act on it.
Okay. Dan, any ideas about how this dateline, October this year, might be intersecting with things that, for instance, Project Looking Glass might be connected to? Are you familiar with anything enigmatic taking place this year?
Well, maybe a few more tools for how you might think about the physics with some rigor. I know in Michael Sala's recent report last couple of days about the Vatican's access to the chronovisor technology, which was a time travel mirror that then they supposedly turned over to the CIA. It was quite a detailed report. You might check out Michael Sala. But a couple things here. Remember, time is only a name for rate of rotation, nothing else. And that is patterns of rotation converge where the density is greatest. For example, where there are peak emotion, you can access that node superluminally. That's what a longitudinal array is, and that's what time travel is. Time travel originally was described as just negentropy, and now we know it's very difficult. You can't move toward disorder, only toward order in time reversal. So there's a lot we know about the physics of time. The advanced people, the Templars, talked about the Templar agenda, the repair of the fabric of time, which fits very well with what Elena Denon and Michael Sala are saying, which is that what we need to avoid is fractionation of the timelines. And there's many reports that very advanced technologies are being used precisely to prevent the timelines from fractionating. And which means as our emotions come to focus, of course, if there are people who really can't withstand that focus, what's called the photon cloud or the rapture experience, essentially means where plasma becomes centripetal enough that if you can't stand the bliss, then obviously you have to peel off into an area where the compression is not so great, which, by the way, explains perfectly the physics of why people rise from the dead during the rapture and the guns will melt. We understand the plasma physics of all of that. It's simply convergence of compression, and withstanding that compression is what enables you to, defractionate the timeline. So that would be some of the physics.
And do you think it's a fair comment that the more of us who are seated within the atom seed of the greater self, or the bliss peak wave, as you would put it, or the still point, the more of us that are nested with real equanimity and equilibrium in the center of the geometry of now, the more of us that catalyze that actualized state of grace, the path of least resistance, to the highest outcome for the collective.
I think that's a very nice way of suggesting what I think is very important, which is groups that lucid dream together. And first they cry together and then they have bliss together. But if they can then lucid dream together, they collectively steer that fabric of time. In fact, give our race an immune system. The fact that a group of coherent lucid dreamers, they fixed a big mess over Canberra recently. We had this lucid dreaming group. Groups who can lucid dream together eventually can go through the sun together and go through death together. And that absolutely is something that helps keep the race together and can pull us through the compression to the needle of the camel.
To the needle of the camel. I like that. You've just flipped that on me. Very good. Thank you, Dan. Beautiful. Speaking of that.
Could I ask Harold a question?
Well, I was actually going to turn to you. You can do so after I ask you my question, which is, how, Ilana, does what you've heard speak to the transhuman agenda or not manifesting?
Well, I was wondering, because I thought I wanted to check if Harold said October 21. I thought it was 21, because, hey, by the way, everybody, today's my birthday. I am 75 years old. Can you believe it?
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
I never knew I would get this old.
Wow.
So Harold, if it's October 21 and you're dividing the time into the year into threes, October, so that would mean February 21 in 23. Is there anything for that? Because it's in a pulse of 3, right?
No, it's just I mention it because last Sunday we had major events on field level. It felt like the angelic realm, seventh density, found back to love. And I just realized it's exactly 1/3 of a year away from the predicted event, which, if you look at time as a geometric structure, kind of binds in, because everything is divided into 3 in nature to come to the next fractal. So this is why I was kind of taking 2 days ago another hint that we do approach some major things. But I would like to really pull it back a little bit to the practical parts, because if even the guns are going to melt away with this event, I would highly recommend to get the metal out of the body.
It sounds like the rapture.
Yeah. Metal out of the body. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, the physics is, in any kind of intense plasma like Therify, if metal heats first, and it's because the dielectric is wrong. And so that they say the guns will melt. What they actually mean is that everything that cannot distribute charge will experience heat, which is to say that anything that cannot experience compression will. And the reason the ancestors come up from the dead literally is when that level of charge distribution efficiency occurs, the ancestors obviously inhabit the songline dreaming tracks, and they're unpacked and literally able to be distributed. So the rapture is a name for charge distribution efficiency, literally. Hey, Ave, Champs-Élysées, it's quite literal.
Yeah, Dan, I've had literally, because I have my coils all over the world. We had this kid, he was playing with his toys in the room in the presence of one of these, vortex coils, and the toy disappeared. And because somebody else on the planet might have it going time reverse and the other person time forward, and I've gone very, very deeply into time. And the subject of time and also how a vortex, if it's tuned right, I'm working with a group now. We're using these things to produce real anti-gravity measurable results. It's a very, very tight group that's connected at a very high level, but because that's where this all goes next. But once you cancel out inertia and gravity, I had this meeting with Glenn Seaborg at the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab years ago, with my boss, Bogdan Magwitch, the nuclear fusion physicist from Yugoslavia. He said, once you're at zero, it doesn't take energy to move this because you're no longer mass and energy equivalent. It's all gone. It actually only takes tiny impulses to move things hyperdimensionally and supersonic speeds, because you actually overcome resistance to movement. And therefore, a rupture in a vortex, and physically, what the Bible says, two will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left behind. I mean, it's physically possible. And why is the other left behind? Because they're not tuned. I had a meeting with Wallace Black Elk, a legendary Native American Indian mystic, and it was a private meeting, one-on-one, and he said there'll be an event with the sun that will be so hot everything will melt except for those who are pure in heart. Those who are tuned will survive this event. He had never told anybody this. This is Wallace Black Elk, with him and I just sitting, next to his chanupa. And I mean, it's a long story actually, but I'm really amazed at how could that happen? How could the sun produce an energy wave that would save some people and destroy others? And it kind of reminds me what Harold's saying here about melting, the guns, and yet the pure in heart, or those who are tuned, don't get harmed, right?
So let's just look at that Sodom and Gomorrah apocryphal metaphor or an analogy, I think, for today. I mean, we're traversing this shadow of death. Those of us who are in any part actualized or thrumming to the pulse of our humanness, we know the danger of looking over our shoulder. We know the danger of looking over our shoulder and identifying with that shit show behind us. Because to identify with BBC, CNN, the status quo, with this drummed up narrative of normalcy that would otherwise pretend to be reality, is a very, very dangerous thing. For us to identify with the pundits who are out there in academia, in mainstream media, in the entertainment complex, on the street, on the billboards, all of that satanic and luciferic white noise of normalcy, which is happening, is, to my mind, Sodom and Gomorrah. And we daren't look over our shoulders, or we will turn to a pillar of salt. Does that ring true to any of you, or is it just me going slightly mad?
There was a huge documentary about finding the radioactive remnants, and there's lots of proof that that there was a nuke at that time. That's clear. The molten glass in the desert, all those stories. And it's true that when we look behind us, we focus on disorder instead of order. And what we need to focus on is the negentropy of the future, which is the bliss pattern. But the other part of the story is when the plasma comes from the sun, the solar wave, we've been practicing steering tornadoes, and that's the ultimate test right there.
Right.
And the physics obviously is non-destructive compression, which is another name for literally what is human bliss. So if you're able to support high levels of bliss, and then you could do that as a group, there's not much limit to the solar winds you can steer. I mean, 11 times it was measured, the solar flare density was radically reduced when 1 million children sang the same song. That's physics is clear, and the sun needs us to make that centripetal force. So I would say collective lucid dreaming bliss groups that's the way to look away from the past and toward the future.
Yeah, love that. David, your thoughts on that?
It's not really even dreaming. When you understand, okay, I don't know how many of you have seen this new movie, The Aerial Phenomena, about the South African school where all the little kids saw the UFO and the alien.
Yes.
There's a time dilation event, and I don't know how many people missed this, but at the end of the film, all these kids are saying the UFO was on the grass, and it was kind of wobbling, but it's on the grass. It's not hovering. And the alien was going in slow motion back and forth, slow motion. So what I'm saying, I mean, in fact, when I was a physics student, I wrote a paper on time dilation as a very young man. And I really understand time and time dilation and Einstein's time dilation is that if somebody, the speed of light for us determines everything we see, yet we don't see anything in real time. We don't actually see the real universe because we don't see everything in real time. The light that left the moon is 1.3 seconds ago. The light that left the sun is 8 minutes and 21 seconds ago. And the light that left Sirius, the star Sirius, is 8.7 years ago. So, and the light that left my hand is a nanosecond ago. So we're in time. But Tesla actually filed a patent for a radio transmitter that was truly a Tesla wave scaler, which was an alternating current radio that was almost 1.618 times the speed of light. It's just shy of that. And I wonder how good they were measuring the speed of light back then. So that shows a factor of 1 to 5, 1 to the golden ratio. And so therefore, this longitudinal wave that Dan's talking about, the Tesla wave, could operate in functions or fractals of phi, which means and I've said this before in this group, is we're actually in time right now. We're in a proprietary location of time because of the speed of light. But yet, when the speed of light hits this crystal, due to the refractive index, time inside this crystal is not the same as time outside this crystal. They're not the same. So that means the alien at the end of the film, the whole message to the kids. To me, this is the whole message.
Here's incidentally, here's the kid, one of the kids' drawings.
Right.
Here are some of the drawings the kids did.
Yes.
So he's moving in slow motion. He's time dilated. He's not in art. He's moving through time, right? So, it's really, the movie is incredible. I mean, it's an incredible story, and it's so pure as witnesses what these kids saw. And I'm like, nobody's noticing the aliens going in slow motion. This is everything, because his time had to cooperate to such a fashion that we could see each other. The kids could see him, and we could see, the alien could see the kids, but their time values are not the same. Now, if we go forward to the data we're getting, and I did an incredible interview with David Mason. I really highly recommend bringing him in this group, because Mason owns about $1 million worth of FLIR cameras and other very incredible detection equipment. He sent the music of whales and dolphins into space and beckoned the ET ships to show up on his FLIR cameras. And these things come in and they're gone in a fraction of a second.
Very good.
So you go from that into time dilation to the case in South Africa, an aerial phenomenon, and we're in the middle. You see, we're all in different time values, which is why we don't see, when we look all over the universe and we look on Mars and we look on Venus, we don't see anybody else there. But yet Tesla got radio messages from either Mars or Venus.
I want to touch on Jimmy Blanchett before we close this panel. Just a couple of minutes here. Watch this. Then I've got questions to put to Harold and to Ilana specifically.
It's been Washington's biggest mystery since Watergate. What kind of dog will the Obamas choose? Our resident veterinarian, Dr.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
And look, this is one time. Forget the conspiracy. Listen to our government agencies. These guys are telling the truth. You know, there's no conspiracy here, folks. Just get your damn vaccine.
All right. Thank you, doctor. Thank you.
Mercury-containing vaccines may help, not harm kids, according to 2 new studies in the journal Pediatrics. There have been widespread concerns that mercury-based preservatives in vaccines might impair the neurological development of children. These new studies suggest that the opposite, that the preservatives may actually be associated with improved behavior and mental performance.
I think people should be careful what they wish for on China. You know, if China were to revalue its currency, or China is to start making, say, toys that don't have lead in them or food that isn't poisonous, their costs of production are going to go up. And that means prices at Walmart here in the United States are going to go up too. So I would say China is our greatest friend right now. They're keeping prices low and they're keeping prices.
Never watch the television. Now, I also mentioned too that a fellow that has been in touch with me for an awful long time, his brother was in the CIA, or is in the CIA. He will never talk about the CIA to him. He'll never give anything away whatsoever, except one bit of advice. He said, never watch the television. Never watch the television. It's the greatest scientific indoctrination tool ever devised. Haven't you figured that out? It's changed the whole culture of nations, not just one nation. Why do you think it was mandatory that everybody in Britain have access to televisions by the government? Why do you think China is under the same program to get everyone with a TV right now? Because they love to have you entertained. Do you really think that? And India is on the same route as well right now too. Most of your ideas and your opinions and how you emulate, because you emulate things, you mimic what you see. As Charles Galton, Darwin and others have said in the past. It becomes you become it. And that's what's happened. It's been very, very, very successful. Never watch the television. You're given a mind of your own, and you've got to use it for yourself. Television.
Well, just taking that as our sort of departure point here. We've got about 7-8 minutes, and then we're winding up this introductory panel. Harold, let me put the question to you. How simple is that, withdrawing attention from television? If we are to reverse this trend of false light, immersion, AI, transhumanism, all the attendant Morgellons shit and the mitochondrial and soul hacking that's going on as apparently the core enterprise of this thing called government. What is your takeaway or your advice to the layman on how we reverse out of this epochal drive to detract from our humanity and drive us into some artificial species?
A number of points. Trust your own thinking instead of compare to your neighbor, and try to make sure that you don't dissent from what the others say. It's just a core motivation. What is true? Is true what I consider to be true, or is true what everybody else is saying? This is one thing. This, of course, includes TV, but this is not that easy, because when people stop watching TV, they go mad. They kill each other, they beat each other, families break apart. We tried that at university, 500 families, not a single family survived 3 months. They all jumped off the program. But if you do it, don't be surprised if things get rough, because this is healing. This is bringing things to the surface that are suppressed by the programming. So actually, it's a good thing if things get rough. So.
Okay. That's beautiful. That's great. That's great advice. Thank you. Much appreciated. Harold, thank you so much for joining us today. It's just wonderful to see you again, brother. And it was particularly lovely having you coming in on the Newearth Summit, just to add your energetic frequency to our great noble endeavor here. Thank you, brother. Much appreciated. Ilana, same question to you. What's the takeaway advisement you give to our mortal fellows?
Well, that is a fabulous little video. I have never owned a television, and I knew early on it was a weapon system after I read Jerry Mander's 4 Arguments for the Elimination of Television in 1977. Great book. There hasn't been another one since. And, you know, regarding the Morgellons, has anyone really thought about how now they are, with the nanotechnology going into our bodies that we're breathing and eating from, that's being just dumped from the skies, not counting the inoculations. Has anyone understood what Mr. Harari was saying who is, the Klaus Schwab's right-hand man, when he said that surveillance now would be from under the skin. And this is the apotheosis of the TV, I think, is all this, all the transmissions, transceiver, everything is going to be inside us through the help of the nanotechnology that is already lodged in our bodies.
Wow. Fascinating. And yes, spooky stuff indeed from under the skin. Well, they certainly managed to hack in there. But yeah, the question, of course, remains, are we able to redeem or recover ourselves, even those who were just caught up in the collateral, in the white noise?
It'll be a clarion call for consciousness, won't it, Sacha? That's how I think of it. We've got to become conscious now. We can't just say, I'm conscious enough. It's got to be more.
Indeed. Alana Freeland, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Really good to see you. Dan, got to ask the same question of you, but on a slightly different spin. Path of least resistance to the highest outcome for humankind in the year 2022 as we move through this midsummer's shift.
Well, I think proof of the fact that bliss is the solution. I want to thank David Sarita for mentioning that Tesla measured golden ratio times the speed of light. Professor Raymond Chow famously measured speeds faster than light, all 1.5 to 1.7 times c light speed, centering on golden ratio times c, which is proof of my life's work that the way you get into that longitudinal array, which is literally a blink rate at which you inhabit the nodes of the extended array. The only mechanism of action at a distance, longitudinal waves, and the only physics of gravity waves, and the only physics of time travel. So remember, this is in fact only the blink rate. So for example, in the moment before death or birth, the reason you see the whole thing is because your blink rate increases for compression, because if you do the compression well, you make it through the camel's eye, as it were. And so there's all the physics is present to prove that access to bliss experience is the way through. And a final thought about when Johann Fritz said, well, no one had ever survived the black goo before Harold's expertise. Then we had one documentary of one young lady who had such bliss experience, she ejected the black goo from her body. Very well documented. This was news to Johann Fritz, who's got the most experience, right? So the answer every time is the same. Intense bliss experience.
Very good. Okay, Dan, you still keep tight as the world's cleverest man. Thank you for that. Shanaz, mandatory to have access to a TV in the UK. I didn't even know that, but how insidious is that? Your closing thoughts, Shanaz.
Okay, so my closing thought is that both time and televisions are created so that we can stay in the illusion, so we can keep living the Groundhog Day. And the fact of the matter is that we are here communicating on all these subjects. Observation affects manifestation according to quantum physics. The fact that we're bringing all these to everybody's awareness, and that the fact that we're so conscious about it, we're already affecting all of our fractal timeline in the future.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And I'll tell you, so long as NASA have a rocket scientist like you in their ranks, there is hope for humanity. But Shanaz, looking forward to this next year of Symposia with you. And thank you for joining us today for the Newearth Summit.
Thank you.
David Sarita, sir, I give you 1 minute final thoughts on today's conversation.
Well, I mean, I say what people need to do, considering all the frequencies we're being bombarded with the microwave towers and so forth, is exactly what Dan Winter and I probably concur on very much, is you have to frequency calibrate your living space, your workspace, and keep it harmonically tuned. You have to harmonically tune your body regularly. And then you have to learn the techniques to reach the true bliss state, because once you reach the bliss state, nothing matters. No suffering can touch you anymore. And Dan, by the way, I met Raymond Chow. Him and I spoke in great length. You and I should talk about that. And Tesla's was 1.57 times the speed of light, except I don't believe, which is well within phi, obviously. But anyway, we should talk because there's a lot there.
David, thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to anchoring the next year's symposium with you. Thank you.